Please join us. We'd love to have you. Most sincerely yours, all that is. Being part of a congregation is to accept an invitation into a deep and lasting relationship. In our tradition, we call this covenant. We're invited into what amounts to sacred vows, deep promises, not unlike partners in a marriage, not unlike monks in a monastery, not unlike comrades in the struggle of human existence. Here in our congregation, the covenant relationship is one that practices diverse, loving community, encourages spiritual growth, works for justice, and celebrates the good in life. This relationship is an invitation to comfort and care for others, an invitation to know and experience the variety of human differences, an invitation to do what you can to create a just and sustainable society, an invitation to pursue a continuous journey of spiritual and personal growth. How do you experience this invitation? Do you read a weekly email? Do you speak with me and Sierra Marie and Jerry and Sherry and Margaret? Are notifications always popping up on your phone telling you what's happening with a team or a committee? Or are you going to your mailbox every day expecting a printed embossed piece of cardboard? Are you listening for opportunities to get involved, participate, and attend things as they surface when you hear about them, perhaps even in casual conversation? Do you look for announcements in the order of service or from the pulpit on Sunday mornings? How do you experience being invited to participate in the relationship of covenant? I really believe that congregational life mirrors life in general. Invitations in this life to a vast array of things are fairly constant, but it's only when we take notice of them that they seem to pop up. So we miss a lot of them. I believe that we experience God, and you can do your own translation. We're Unitarian Universalists, whatever that is for you. I believe we experience God through the people, places, and events of our life. Life is one long, continuous invitation to come along, join the party, hang out, go on a date, be part of the club. Please join us. We'd love to have you. Most sincerely yours, all that is. Every moment of every day, the phenomenon of the cosmos swirls around us. But it's the morning we get up early, perhaps with a loved one, and go sit with coffee or tea on the porch, or take a walk in the city park, or go stroll along a beach somewhere, and watch and wonder as the star moves up through the atmosphere that we realize the invitation always being handed to us. Every moment of every day, we'll encounter people we don't know, strangers. They'll walk past us, drive past us, flash by us instantly on the internet. But it's only when that one person might step in front of us, open and hold the door as we're going into the supermarket or the bank, with a huge smile on their face, that we take notice of our fellow passengers on Spaceship Earth. Likewise, going to church on Sunday, showing up here, attending an event, joining a committee, the week to week and day to day of existence in a faith community goes by like a lot of the rest of our lives sometimes. And I think from the outside, just about any faith community you want to study will look the same from a casual outside observance with these different things going on. But just as in the rest of life, when something breaks in, when the sermon says something that speaks directly to your heart, as if I wrote it just for you, I did. If a song Jerry sings is from your own private playlist of life's awesome moments, a soundtrack that's all yours, and yet you can't believe once again that Jerry read your mind, which he just did with me again with Rainbow Connection. When your children return from downstairs or outside, laughing and smiling, showing you something. When someone invites you to their place for dinner. When your committee receives a thank you letter from a community partner to which you made a donation or for whom you hosted an event. When you stand outside in the bitter cold, advocating for justice for the Palestinians. And all of a sudden, it's not the ordinary, I just went to church today. It's special. It's immediate, heartwarming, stirring, something that helps you get through and reminds you of why you even bother to belong to a faith community in the first place. Just like everything else, in a special moment, we notice when it grabs our attention, we get it. When it snaps us out of our rambling shame of the past and anxiety about the future and gets us in that moment. That's when we realize the invitation is there all the time. It's there all the time. You come too. Join us. This party's for you. In fact, we're throwing it in your honor. Elizabeth Barrett Browning's poem epitomizes this. Every common bush is afire with God. Everything in the earth that's alive is brimming with that spirit of life we sing about. But only when we bother to notice, we take off our shoes. And taking off your shoes was an ancient and sometimes still common practice of when you're in a holy or sacred space. You're in holy ground, you take off your shoes. I have a Methodist minister friend in Texas who always preaches barefoot. And one day, many years ago, I asked her why, because the church is, holy ground. And she said, well, sort of, but it's more like everywhere is holy ground, and so is everyone. And I want everyone to know that. So barefoot. The covenantal relationship we are called to in this community asks us to go barefoot pretty much all the time, because love is at the center of everything. And that's how we show up. And even though we proclaim love is the center of everything, sometimes we don't put it there. We get sidetracked by stuff, our own selfishness, work, whatever's going on, health. So many things that we struggle with just in the day-to-day can push love out of the center a little bit, and we got to remember to tug it back in. The opposite of love and covenant, I really believe, is consumerism, something we're all brainwashed into in our society. The opposite of authentic relationship is transactional relationship. I'm only going to give you something if I get something back. And it better be worth the full $10 I gave you. And unfortunately, all too often church, and again, your own translation, church, synagogue, temple, mosque, whatever, your faith community, all too often, it gets transactional too. I went to a conference a few years back, way before monthly themes had caught on in Unitarian Universalism. And the church hosting the event was in the middle of a sermon series on the topic of grace. It was a Christian church. The topic was grace. They were in the middle of a sermon series. And during the second day of the conference, I noticed something really interesting about all the posters and advertisements and little cards and flyers that were everywhere about this sermon series. Not one image, not one poster, not one announcement provided any other information other than it was May and the theme was grace. No Sunday mentioned by day or date. No titles of any sermon or talk. No specific description of what any Sunday's program was going to look like. All they were telling you was, we're talking about grace this month. Come, you're invited. I wonder if we could do that. What would happen if this week was the last week we published where all the upcoming services were going to be about? We're doing invitation this month. You're invited. We're so used to a market mentality that it seems almost alien not to have that in our religious setting. And yet that's not part of our religion. That's part of our culture that surrounds us. Our setting is about relationship. You're invited. Show up. Come on. This party's for you. We're throwing this for you. We often think about our relationship here transactionally. And I don't think any of us do it intentionally. It's the water we swim in here in 21st century North America. I don't like this or that. I want a church with youth programs. I want a church that has social justice. I want fewer hymns and more jazz. Got that? I'm put off if something isn't what I don't like. I don't like it. I don't want to go. It's not for me. Heard a retired pastor of Riverside Church in New York City, big famous church. It was a couple years ago at the church they have every year at a middle collegiate down in the city. He was saying that you should not like everything that goes on in your church. In fact, it's bad if you like everything that's going on in your church. In a vibrant, multi-generational, multicultural congregation, he said, you should only really like about 75 to 80% of what's happening. And he said, but because if you like everything, if 99% of everything is right up your alley, you like 99% of what's going on at your church, you can be certain that your church will only appeal to people just like you. Hard to invite people to that. It's a real specific audience. In our polarized age, it sounds a little tempting maybe at first. I want to like 99% of everything that's there, because some of what's going on around that's not for me is kind of really, oh my gosh. And it might be tempting to want that, but that's not beloved community. That's not radical welcoming. That's not diversity. That's not what we're called to do. That's not what we're invited into relationship for. The relationship covenant invites us into is deep, and we live in a world of shallow relationships, a world where we call people friends who we acknowledge on social media. Covenant invites us to make friends. And not everyone in a congregation will be one's friend, but I certainly hope you have and will make more friends here. This is one of those places, a third place. It's not work, it's not home, it's another place where you can make connections with people who will get you, see you, hear you. Make friends that aren't your Sunday acquaintances, but people you invite more deeply into your life, and they invite you. more deeply into theirs. Covenant invites us to that level of relationship, both in the congregation and the world. And it would be a fascinating and transformative experience if we allow that invitation to permeate us so much that we felt invited into everything that's going on here. What if everyone was invited into leadership? Do you know anything about the Baha'i community? The Baha'i community has an astoundingly awesome way of choosing their faith community leaders. No matter the size of the community, from the local community like our congregation to the international governing body, when it's time to put new leaders on a team, and no one has like a position of leader, it's all a leadership team that governs everything at every level. When there are openings on that team, when it's time to choose a new team, everyone in the community votes, and there's no campaigning, there's no nominating committees. Everyone's given a slip of paper, and if there's 7 people on the leadership team, everyone's asked to write down 7 names. And the 7 names mentioned the most are on the team. And part of being a member of that community means if you're named, you serve. And they take this really seriously. I only got to know one Baha'i community any well. It was years ago, right after I was ordained outside of Boston somewhere, and the local interfaith group had a Baha'i congregation that was part of it. And when I learned about this, I just felt that was awesome. And the representative who came to all our meetings, she said, and we all take it very seriously, you know, don't name somebody you know just got diagnosed with an illness. Don't name somebody, you know, who's having a difficult pregnancy, you know, all the stuff. So name people you know who are intelligent and kind and understand Baha'i. And very rarely, she says, does anybody ever get named who really isn't qualified to do it? I just think that's amazing. What if we all felt invited to be leaders, sometimes on a leadership team, sometimes in our own way doing something else at some point in our life here, in some way? We have wonderful greeters. I think it was Jeff, got greeted like 4 times in a row. We're all just there. It was like he was pulling himself down the hallway when he got in. And we were all just there naturally. That was just like who we are. It was such a great moment. And we have great greeters, but we're all greeters. What if we're all invited to greet new people and make them welcome? What if it's everybody's job? We have amazing volunteers who work with Sierra Marie to create programs and community for children and youth. But we're all invited to make this place welcoming and supportive of children and childhood and parents and parenthood. We have a rather good staff. And board. And we're thinking always about how to grow our congregation, market our congregation, let people know about us. But aren't we all invited to do this work as well? Isn't this part of just being here? In fact, as a person invited into our covenant, the most vital and important thing you can do is invite someone else. In every study, in every survey that you ever see published about being invited to church, visiting a new church, participating in church, again, substitute faith community of your choice, the same thing always comes out on top. Why did you attend? A friend invited me. In some surveys and some studies, up to as high as 85 to 90% of respondents said they attended because someone invited them. If you're wondering ever about why there aren't more people here, or why there aren't more children or families, or more people of color, or more queer people, ask yourself, when's the last time I invited one of those people? Because that's the way most people who show up, show up. As you have been invited, go forth and invite others. Now, get ready. That's called evangelism. And that's a Greek word, and all it means is tell some good news. That's all it means. It's been associated with one tradition, but it doesn't have to be connected to that. That's all it means. Tell somebody some good news. I'm hoping that this month, the theme has made you feel invited. Invited to deepen your participation here. And that deepening might be through attention, taking more notice, more detailed notice of our community life, paying more attention to what's going on, see what might be speaking to you. It might be taking a role of more responsibility on a committee or a team, volunteering a little bit more in one way. It might be deepening your study of Unitarian Universalism. It might be inviting someone you know to join us here. You can tell them this party's for you. You're invited. It's in your honor. And as I ask you to invite others, I once again invite you. I await your RSVP. Thanks a lot for watching this video. It would help me out a great deal if you liked the video to give it a big thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, share this video with others, maybe ring that notification bell so you can be informed when we put out other videos like this. Check out my website and blog at tonylorenzen.com for even more resources that will open your mind, touch your heart, and inspire your spirit.